is the hardest you have ever failed with a boy? Story 1. One time, I kissed a boy on a school bus without warning and told him that he could get off at my stop and we could walk to my house because my parents weren't home. He said no because he was going to miss Dragon Ball Z. Story 2. My senior year of high school, I had a quiet crush on one of my friends that grew steadily larger as we approached graduation. He asked me to the formal prom for the U.S. Unexpectedly, I was thrilled but cynical. I knew he'd probably asked me, a friend, just to escape the teenage drama surrounding the whole thing. That's what I would have done. At the after party, we all had a bit to drink, and I made my big move. I noticed him wandering off and put myself on a path that would intersect his. The party was in a neighborhood of sparse houses with big yards and bushlands. We wandered along the road, talking and generally being friendly and flirty. I knew him fairly well, which only made me more nervous. We sat down on the grass, then made out. I was high on success and confidence. I touched her for the first time. We said reasonably romantic things and spent the rest of the night with our hands in each other's back pockets. I was pretty stoked. We fell asleep on a porch, spooning. Next afternoon, I find out that he asked out another girl. Not 4 hours after our exploits. They're engaged now. Ouch. Story 3. Freshman year. Didn't want a dorm. Wanted to be cool live off campus. Yeah. Rented a room from Guy Hood. Inherited a huge house. Soon found out we had a lot in common. Sharing meals. He was a great cook. Going to concerts, gardening his backyard, etc. He was an elementary school teacher and invited me to all the social events at his school. So I fell desperately in love with him and spent many nights alone in my room, wondering if that was the night he'd finally show up to ravage me. About 6 months in, we throw a huge birthday party for him. Everything was lovely. Good food, good weed, good company. In the wee hours when everyone started drifting home, one friend, a fellow teacher of his, stayed to help with the cleanup. After everything had been put away, I was giving the friend a big thank you goodbye hug when my roommate came up behind me and put his arms around the two of us. It felt lovely to be sandwiched between two tall, gorgeous men, so I luxuriated in the warmth for a minute or two. Then I tilted my head to find that they were engaged in a plunging kiss. Still, I was the decoy girlfriend to a man who wasn't ready to come out. Ladies, piece of advice, guys, don't read between the lines. I can't tell you how many times I've heard it's about freaking time. Didn't you get my earlier hints from a woman after she made the first move? Really, most ex-wives are somewhat clueless when it comes to women subtly, and with the modern creep label are somewhat scared. If you want a guy, be obvious. And yes, we do appreciate a woman making the first move. And no, we don't for the most part. There are always exceptions, badmouth women who are assertive, edit clarify the men are clueless part. Story 4. In elementary school, I would chase this boy around in art class and try to kiss him. He complained to the teacher, and I got sent home for harassment. Story 5. I had an amazingly adorable Japanese tutor in high school. It never occurred to me that a hot boy would be into me. So when he asked me if I had a date to prom, I said that I wouldn't be going and asked him what word described being utterly uninterested in something. I have no idea why I worded it so harshly either. I didn't get that he'd asked me out until someone told me much later. Story 6. Girls, if you want a guy to know you're interested, just start massaging his crotch. Trust me, he'll get the message, and he won't cry rape if he's not interested. Story 7. I was the boy in the scenario, but I'm counting this as a pretty solid female fail at a friend's house in H. We had a few people over, and one of the chicks, she didn't go to our school, and I didn't know her, and I were hitting it off. We all went to the living room to watch a movie, and she sat right next to me. We started fooling around, and out of nowhere her hand is in my pants and jerking me off. I was in heaven for the sheer unexpected HJ. Then someone answers the door, and in walked her mother to pick her up. I was kind of mortified, and she must have been too, but her response was to just keep yanking away while her mom stares directly at me. She kept fapping away, and I was going limper by the second and trying to escape. She kept it up for 30 seconds or more, which felt like an eternity. Finally, her mom freaks out and starts yelling. She starts yelling back, all while still pumping away, and now all of my friends and her mom are watching. She eventually got up, and they began arguing right there, and she was explaining emphatically that she didn't want to give me blue, as her mom is yelling for her to get in the car. She looks at me crying and asks me to call her. Yeah, I never did, and I had that story circulating for years. Story 8. I don't know if this counts, but I spent about 1.5 years stalking and obsessing over this one boy excessively. I really was a bit of creep. My stalker behavior included, but wasn't limited to purposely taking the long way home from wherever I was, because I had a theory that if I was out for longer, my chances of seeing him would be increased, memorizing every conversation we had, even little ones later recording said conversations. In a little book I had a code name for him. memorizing what lessons he had and what form he was in, and trying my hardest to walk past them, staying up until a ridiculous time in case he came online, purposely walking past where I thought he lived on the off chance that he might see me and come out, obsessively watching YouTube and memorizing videos he sent me. I used to be able to talk along with this, walking extremely slowly out of school, so he'd have to walk past me I could talk to him, or walking extremely quickly and straight past him to see if he'd speak, typing "I love you" on IM, and then not sending. ID also do this mentally in actual conversation. I once tried to hug him, and he ran away and pretended to be chasing a frisbee. Story 9. Things were getting hot and heaving with a boy, and I was going down on him. I stopped to take a breather for a second and get into a more comfortable position. When my elbow slipped, his ran down the side of my face, and I hadn't shaved in a few days. It hurt him and kind of killed the mood. Story 10. Stayed up all night with him watching Star Trek and Evangelion. I tried to escalate things, but he just wasn't responding. I slept on the couch. I hope he's not a Redditor. Story 11. As a man, I looked through all these comments hoping to see a story about myself. Then I realized either way, I would be disappointed. I don't find a story and realize a girl didn't secretly like me. I do find a story and realize that a girl secretly liked me. Story 12. In high school, me and this boy I fancied would hang out a lot. One day our school had a half day, and I was going to walk with him to his house after school to watch TV together. Except I didn't want to watch TV, if you know what I mean. We're standing in the hallway at school, and one of his friends asked him what he was up to the rest of the day, and he replied something along the lines of "A star named Alice is coming over." But I have no idea why. He acted like his day was ruined because I was coming over, I felt like. Story 13. I was a year younger than everyone else in my class, from a lower economic background, so no major brand name clothes, no giant CD collections, no pocket money, etc., and not at all well-liked. The worst part was probably that the other kids could see how desperately I wanted to fit in, which of course just made them meaner. So I liked a fellow in my grade 5 class, but I wouldn't have dreamed of doing anything about it. Then one day, the top 3 girls in the class excitedly corralled me into a corner during recess, telling me that my crush wanted to speak with me. Nervous as all heck, I waited, and when he came, he said the nicest things to me anyone had ever said, just the kinds of things a girl with low self-confidence would kill to hear from anyone once in a while. When he left, I felt like I was walking on air. I could hardly believe that anyone would think such nice things about me, and I wanted to savor it. Then the top 3 girls returned, with all the other girls in the class tagging along, and asked endless questions about what had transpired. Suddenly, I had information that made me popular too, so I told them. Big mistake. As soon as ID finished relaying what the fellow had said, he leaped out from behind a corner, along with all the other boys in the class. Surrounded by the entire class, I was forced to listen as he laughed and took back everything Head said, throwing in a lot of vicious words in their stead. "How could you ever even think for a second that someone like you had a chance with someone like me?" was one phrase that still comes to mind. But a lot of the personal remarks about my appearance, my intelligence, my laugh, my teeth, etc. also bore their way deep inside. Suffice it to say, I was devastated, and as soon as the circle let me leave, I tore out and away for a hill at the edge of our school, where I proceeded to bawl my eyes out. The really sucky bit is that one of the students later informed our teacher that I had tried to commit suicide by leaping off that hill, and the teacher took it to the principal, and the principal called home. And well, my home life was really shitty already, but it got shittier when my parents found out about the purported attempt. I was so afraid of my mother, who came tearing after me in the most aggressive way imaginable after my father told her what the school had said, that I hid under my sister's bed in fear. She hauled me out by my hair, dragging me across the floor and locking us both in my room so we could talk about what had happened. 4 years after, both she and my father would bring up that purported suicide attempt whenever they were upset over other matters at home. Like my depression was the icing on the cake of all their lives' problems. TLDR, worst experience ever. Story 14. When I was younger and available, I just assumed that anyone who expressed interest didn't yet know me well enough, hadn't yet gotten a good enough look at me to realize how totally undesirable I was. In retrospect, I wasted some pretty cute years and the chance to maybe have been close to some pretty worthwhile guys, but spared them some crazy. Good news, I grew up, got myself in better order, and it doesn't have to end in forever alone. TLDR, I lacked even the confidence to try enough to fail. Story 15. When I was 16, I was totally in love with this guy. We hooked up a few times. Then he broke it off with me because we were too similar and would be better as friends. He was right, but man, that hurt. A few weeks later, we met at a club, and we got talking, and I told him that even when I'm on a diet, if I want a Mars bar, I just have it. Then I proceeded to mouth rape him. We did end up being friends for the next 10 years, but I sure hope he forgot that Mars bar comment. it still makes me die a little inside. Story 16. I met a boy in my freshman year of high school, and we became friends pretty quickly, but it wasn't until sophomore year that I started realizing that I really liked him. We had a ton in common, and ended up going to 2 homecoming dances and junior prom together, but we never officially went out or had any real dates or anything like that. The most we ever did was play Smash Brothers and DDR in my basement, I guess. So we get to senior year, and I still haven't really told him how I feel about him. When another girl mutual friend asks me, "What are you going to do if he starts going out with someone else?" I replied with something like, "He'll get over it, I guess, since I'm not really the type to go after a guy who's taken." And pretty much the next day, she asked him out for a couple of months. That felt like the most epic failure on the face of the planet. Don't worry, everything went all right in the end. He's gay XD. Story 17. I had a really big crush on a friend for ages. Eventually, we ended up getting really drunk and sleeping together. I thought, finally it's happening. The next day, he said we should forget it happened because he didn't want to ruin our friendship. FML. Story 18. My mom and I had been arguing in front of my little brother because I like Asians and redheads. But I guess she expected me to go out only with people from our all black except for us neighborhood, because she said I would never find an Asian or redhead to date. The 3 of us went to the grocery store, and my brother yells out there's an Asian guy. I looked up to see the hottest Asian guy I have ever seen in person still. And yes, I still remember what he looks like. He was that hot, and I have seen many Asian guys in person since walking towards me. I stared at him, dumbfounded by his hotness for a moment. He had obviously heard my brother, and I was too embarrassed to say anything. When I was in college, I had a block of 3 hours between classes on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and it wasn't feasible for me to go home, come back, so I'd hang out in a nearby mall. There was a new Japanese restaurant in the food court with a cute guy working there, so I made small talk with him. His uncle owned the place and knew I liked the guy, but the guy seemed oblivious. Eventually, I gave the guy my phone number. So he called and asked what I wanted to talk about. I don't remember what I said, but his reply was, "Oh, I thought you wanted a special order or something." Then he asked how old I was. I said 16, and he said, "I'm 21. You're like my little sister or something." He also said he didn't want to date because he had to go back to Japan soon. He was just over here to help his uncle start the restaurant. The next time I went back, the uncle and the guy saw me coming into the food court, and the uncle said in Japanese, ID never told them. I spoke at something to the effect of, "Stop being an idiot. She's cute and smart. You can take her back to Japan with you," and the guy went into the back to avoid talking to me. I was too embarrassed to go into the food court for a long time. Story 19. Magai. If asked, I'd have to say I'm straight, although I believe it's more of a scale, and am not exactly all the way to one side. So I had this friend in high school who was really popular, super charismatic, and really handled himself well with the ladies. He didn't have a great home life, so he was staying with me for a while. We were sitting in my room watching TV, and we're talking about dumb. The conversation eventually led to past experiences with girls, and out of nowhere he asked if he could kiss me. I'd kissed girls previous to this, and I had a couple gay friends at the time, and being ambivalent to homosexuality, it didn't really faze me. I'm sure I at least looked surprised, though. I always thought he was as straight as an arrow. I knew right when he asked me that he didn't want to peck, and I guess it was kind of unspoken that he wanted to kiss with the same kind of passion I would kiss a girl. I guess it was the way he looked at me. It was almost the exact same look a girl would give you. Knowing this, I say yes. I wouldn't say there was anything spectacular about the kiss. It didn't arouse me or make me want to kiss him again. Although I would have to say from an objective point of view, it was a perfect kiss, about 30 seconds long with equal amounts tonguing and lip action. We smiled at each other, and he kind of whispered, "That was neat." I matter-of-factly said, "It was definitely interesting." We both then went into critical analysis and ended up agreeing that it was kind of scratchy. This fascinating tale doesn't end there, boys and girls. No siree. About 30 minutes later, he asked if he can give me a. This kind of put me off a little, but only for a second. I thought about it rationally for a few seconds. We'd just kiss a very not best buds kiss. Is there even a best buds kiss? So I took that into consideration, but I still felt unsure about it, and ultimately told him no. I didn't give him any excuses or anything, just said no. He was fine with that, and we went back to watching TV. I didn't feel awkward or uncomfortable after that, but I developed a train of thought that when something like, "I like blowjobs, I love blowjobs," I would basically give anything to have her right now. Okay, he'll let you give me a. Well, he was either getting a vibe from me he didn't like, or he'd chicken out himself. But he declined. Since I was still on the fence myself, I was fine with this at the time, and everything went back to normal fairly quickly. After many years thinking about it, in retrospect, I would have really liked for him to have given me a. We remained friends for a long time after that, and I would be still, but he joined the Army and was deployed to Iraq, and is a lifer now, training enlistees how to operate Patriot missile batteries. On a related note, we had a mutual female friend who worked at a comic book store that we were both interested in. He moved in before I could, and I backed off. No big deal. They dated for a while, and we were all still friends, during that period, I never told her about that night we kissed. That is until they decided to get married. I would have never told her except she had been married before, and it didn't work out. Because her ex was gay? I was torn, but ended up deciding that if they really loved each other, it wouldn't matter. They could handle it rationally between themselves. But as a friend to both of them, I had to tell her they did end up getting married and having kids, and were together for quite some time. So luckily, I don't have to feel guilty about that. I didn't tell her that he asked me for offer to give me. I am not sure how that would have affected her decision. But either way, I still wanted that. TLDR, I'm a straight guy who kissed another straight guy. I was offered to turn it down, change my mind, was denied. In retrospect, would have liked. I just realized after reading that all parties involved, and then some, could easily discern from the specifics who was whom. Oh well, also I want to apologize to all LGBT for posting this using a throwaway. We don't live in a perfect world, but I would hang out with you in a gay bar and march in your parade. Edit spelling. Seriously, this thread is full of some of the mildest rejections I've ever heard of. I wish that my biggest fails were this easy. The bold one is kind of bad. But the bolded italicized one is the only story that even belongs in this thread. Top 10 fails so far by points 1. Girl kissed him on the bus, asked to walk home with him, and parents weren't home. He said he couldn't because head missed Dragon Balls. 2. Hottest guy in school asked her out, but she couldn't because she was about to eat dinner too. Guy asked her prom. They hooked up and had a great night. But next day, he asked another girl out. 1. Tutor asked her to prom, but she didn't realize and rejected. 3. She obsessed over him, tried to hug him, but he ran away. 4. Had already hooked up with the guy, was going home with him after school, but he told a friend he didn't know why she was coming over. 7. Watch movies with on the couch. Tried to escalate, but it didn't work. 8. She hooked up with him a few times, but he broke it off and said he just wanted to be friends. Later, she saw him in a club and made out with him and gave him 8, had a crush on friend, got drunk, and slept together. Next day, friend said he didn't want it to happen again, so it didn't ruin friendship. 6. Girl had guys say, did it hurt having your face smashed against that brick wall that made you so ugly? Story 20, my first year of college. I had been dating a guy that I'd previously been just friends with for a few days, and he and some of my friends went out for my birthday. We went back to my room and cuddled and watched a movie and later made out. Then I started grinding against his leg. This was at about 3 or 4 a.m., thinking he might want to go a little farther than making out, but then he decided to go home because it was late. After that day, he got pneumonia, and it was concurrently finals week. So I'd walk like 30 minutes in the dark through scary alleys and such to bring him ginger ale and crackers and to get him a thermometer and a bag of Skittles. Then he broke up with me. A friend later told me he thought I was too clingy. Then he went on a date, a really pretty blonde sorority girl, and I realized that we're better as friends means I don't ever want to talk to you again. Story 21, major difference between man and women. No matter how heinous the woman is, no man will be insulted by her advances. She could be a dumpster fire and the guy will be on cloud 9 for a day. Women have this mathematically precise idea of what they're worth, and being approached by any man under said number will send them into a spiral of indignance, man. That chick wanted to get at my junk. Cool woman, impertinent loser. Who does he think he is? Story 22, to try to sum up a long story fairly shortly. I'm a huge nerd and met a guy guild leader playing World of Warcraft years ago. Had him and others from the guild on my IM list, but never spoke to him in any non-game related way. Years later, after I had quit playing, I logged into the IM client for the first time in forever. And he was on, so I messaged him to say, what's up? We linked music and threads, etc. back and forth for a while, progressed to friends, realized we really cared for each other. I left my husband, and we talked about me coming out to meet him. I knew we would hit it off immediately, had no doubts, but I chickened out and stomped his heart BC. I was then almost 300 pounds after a lifetime of bad habits, years of miserable marriage caught up to me. And he was in great shape. I totally blew what I knew could have been true happiness. We didn't speak for about 6 months, and in that time I went through a lot of self-reflection and reconstruction. I changed my diet and gave up soda. Losing 20 pounds, I contacted him again and slowly let him take the pace on us speaking again. In April 29, I flew out to meet him at around mid-200 pounds, and he didn't give about my weight. We hit it off as well as we thought, and dated long-distance visiting when we could for a year while we did what we needed to move closer during that year. And up to date, I have lost around half of my highest body weight by sticking to my change in diet and working out daily. And I'm almost at my goal. I feel great, and I feel like I look great. He loved me for me, and getting healthy and in shape has just an added bonus for both of us. I have lived with him since March of this year, and everyday life is better. I turned my epic fail into epic win. Story 23, little Omgim Suchadork didn't realize that she could talk sports all she wanted to in high school, but it generally wouldn't work around the boys in the sci-fi club because they didn't know what she was going on about. Edit 10 switching, it gets me a lot. Oh, And then there was the very long-term high school sweetheart boyfriend who not only liked sports, but the same team I liked, yes, who was ready to commit to extremely long-term, and once mentioned he didn't like Asian girls, but then when I fell into deep depression and he couldn't handle it anymore, left me for an Asian girl, who's a few years younger than me, at his job, during the holidays, BRB, still mending my heart from all the glitches. Story 24, oh god, this is bad. When I was in 6th grade, I had a huge crush on this boy. I'd been listening to 98 Degrees South song, Invisible Man, nonstop for about a month, thinking of this guy. Clearly, according to my 6th grade model of how the world worked, if I started leaving him anonymous notes saying how much I was pining for him, he would fall madly in love with the mysterious girl and yearn to know who she was, and we would live happily ever after. So, I started leaving notes in his locker. But when he didn't get them, who actually looks in their locker? I started changing my strategy. I started slipping them into his bag with obvious references to that song and other statements that I thought would demonstrate the intensity of my affections, but which really just demonstrated the pathetic desperation of my infatuation. I signed them The Invisible Woman. Of course, everyone knew how much I love that song because I talked about it constantly. And after he mentioned the note to one of the coolest and most beautiful girls in the class, she immediately figured out who it was. Together, they looked in his locker for more notes and found a backlog, and they read them together. Naturally, she told everyone what a freak I was not exactly one of the cool kids, and he was cooler than cool, and I found out that I'd been discovered via merciless mockery. However, my hope was ironclad, so I sucked it up and asked him out. He said no, and started going with the girl who exposed my embarrassment to the world, who then mocked me for years to come. Epilogue, I'm 25 now. I ran in her a few years ago. And let me just say, revenge is a dish best served fat. Story 25. Really close guy friend who I've had a crush on for years tells me that when he kissed me and cuddled with me all night, it was just because he was drunk. I still feel awful just thinking about it. Story 26, with over 1,500 comments in this thread at this point. No one will read this, but here is anyway my best friend's brother from my teenage years. Edit snip TMI with potential for identification. Got nervous and had to remove. Sorry TLDR, we had a lifelong case of puppy love or something. Married, had kids with other people, still dream about each other. Corny but true. The end. Story 27, kind of similar to Eternal Dalmatian. I used to drive past my crush's house, even though it was nowhere near mine. On the off chance I'd see him, I would try to think of any random thing that I could start up a conversation about. I'd do the whole walking past thing, try to figure out stuff he liked so I could seem similar, etc. For his birthday, I handmade a card about all of the great things about him. It was supposed to be funny, but I'm pretty sure it came off as weird. Of course, he ended up dating my best friend, and later told me he knew I had a crush on him the whole time. To be fair, I live in a really small town, so obsessive crushes were kind of the most entertaining thing around. Story 28, I was secretly sleeping with a friend of mine, and I was starting to like him too much. It was complicated, as we were hiding it from everyone else, and one of my friends who used to sleep with him would have been pissed that she found out, which she did, but that's another story. So after we snuck him or not sneaked, off together the last time and got the on, I said immediately after, we can't do this anymore. The look on his face was stunned. I said, I'm starting to like you too much, and if we keep doing this, I'm going to want more, and you don't date. His reply, maybe it's about time I started to date, and I said, well, I'm not really ready. My lack of total confidence resulted in me turning him down. I assumed he couldn't possibly want me to be his girlfriend. Woof. Now he's dating another friend of mine who is way hotter than me, and a gamer, forever, alone. Story 29, in middle school, I had a crush on this boy named Steven. I was in my math class that day, and somehow my teacher had come to find out that I had a crush on Steven. Teacher proceeded to embarrass me. Teacher, hey Steven, I will give you an A if you go out with Nancy, that's my name. Steven, hello? H. That was wrong. Story 30, I had a very, very extensive crush on a guy in high school. It started sophomore year, and after enough friendliness and spending most of the day together, we had all the same classes for over a year. I finally decided one weekend to ask him out. We had an uncharacteristically deep and personal conversation over IM on Saturday night, and it took all my effort to not ask him out right there, but I managed to withhold because I wanted to be classy and ask him out in person. Sunday evening rolls around, and I'm giddy with excitement about asking him out the next morning. Before heading to bed, I decided to check my Facebook out of habit, and there it was in my news feed. I saw that his relationship status had changed to dating my worst enemy ex-best friend from elementary school whom I hadn't spoken to in years. I pretty much died. I was completely crushed and cried for days. Months passed, and they remained together. We remained friends, and I pined. Over another year later, senior year, at this point, they were still together, and I decided that I needed to say something. So I confessed my long-standing love for him as we drove around in the dark for 3 hours. He confirmed that had I asked him out that Saturday, he would definitely have said yes. I still can't help but love him. College comes, and we end up at the same college. He still was spiteful. I finally decide 4 years is too long to pine for someone and start pursuing a relationship with someone I met at college. The day after my new boyfriend and I go official, he breaks up with spiteful. I've taken it as a sign from the universe that we should never be together. TLDR, I miss being able to date my 4-year-long crush by 12 hours, twice. Meet Captain Hindsight. Story 31, my freshman year of high school. I invited a boy to go with me to the park to walk my dog and hang out. My mom drove us there. When we arrived, we looked down and realized my dog threw up some kind of dirt dog food mixture on both myself and the date. It was all over our pants. It was the nastiest thing ever. I never heard from him again. Story 32, probably going to be buried. But at least mine are actual rejections. One, during high school, this guy moved in with his aunt and uncle because his house had been destroyed by Hurricane Katrina. He had the greatest accent ever, and I felt pretty hard, but he didn't get that I liked him. So I made him a mixed CD god. I'm awkward and put it in his locker with a note saying I like him. Our lockers didn't have locks on them. Well, he showed it to all of his friends, some of whom were my friends, and some of whom weren't at all my friends. I was mercilessly teased for the rest of the school year, until he moved back to New Orleans, too. Freshman year of college, I had a crush on this guy who was in a big group of friends with me. We would talk all the time, and when we got drunk, we almost always did the drunk cuddle thing. And by the end of the year, I was like, he clearly hasn't got the message yet. They'll just tell him. So right before I was going to leave for the airport, I told him I liked him, and he said, yeah, I know. I tried to explain to him that I liked him in a special way, and he again said, yeah, I know. So I just left for the bus, ending up being like 2 hours early for my flight because I didn't know what else to do. Story 33. Some of these are reposts, simply copied and pasted. Some of them are the first time I've ever mentioned. All of them made me sad. One, my first crush ever, was in 5th grade. He was really funny, good at sports, and nice to me. But one day I was walking down the hallway, and he was walking on the other side. He looked at me right in the eyes, then yelled, "I don't like you," at my face. I sort of felt a little baffled, I guess, to 7th grade. I got another colossal crush on a boy who sat next to me in band class. I was so shy, but I tried my hardest to communicate with him. The guy was admittedly, whenever I attempted to talk to him, he would just tell me to shut the up and ignore me. And just after I developed feelings for him, he moved halfway across the world. I never saw him again. During my freshman year of high school, I got this huge crush on a sophomore guy. I couldn't get him out of my mind. He was so good-looking and friendly. So I went out there and made an effort to get to know him, which was difficult because I'm a really shy girl. We soon became friends, so the guy lead me on and even put his arm on my shoulders affectionately. I was so happy. I totally thought he was going to be my first boyfriend. Then he took my cell phone and told me he was going to put his number on the contacts list. I called it later, and lo and behold, it was not his number, but the rejection hotline. Hey, Racer, it sounds like some of you guys might remember this one. This post was really popular a while ago. I modified a little. So there was this guy who's been my friend for several years, and I sort of found myself liking him. I've known him for a long time. We shared a lot of interests and stuff. I mean, everybody kept telling me that he obviously likes me. He's always hanging out with me and stuff. So I was sick of playing the flirting game. One of my other friends advised that I should just be direct and tell him how I felt about him. It took me a while to muster up the courage. I finally coughed up a lick you when we were alone. His response, "I'm gay." I knew it was too good to be true, forever alone. Edit: after rereading this post, I just found a pattern. I've been rejected by a boy every consecutive odd-numbered year. 5th grade, 7th grade, 9th grade, 11th grade. Weird.